Mr. Sigmund Freud is on the council. I have spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours studying with Mr. Sigmund, and so has Ian, and he is wonderful. Sigmund Freud, who was he? Well, of course, he was Austrian. He was a psychiatrist, and there's a lot of controversy on Sigmund's work as well. Yeah, amongst the psychological profession, the psychotherapy profession, the psychiatry profession, there's a lot of controversy about his work. The majority of that controversy, I believe, comes from the simple fact that they don't understand what the purpose of Sigmund Freud was. A lot of people say, well, Sigmund Freud didn't really do a lot of counselling, he didn't really do a lot of work. He just sat in his room and his patient came along and laid on a couch and he let them talk. The purpose that Sigmund Freud came forward into this life and his reincarnation in the lifetime that he lived was to map the mind. That was his purpose. Simple as that, map the mind. And he mapped the mind by allowing people to talk. Just talk and talk and talk. Where would the mind take them? How would they solve their own problem? Where would the mind, what depth would the mind go to, and what would the mind bring up of its own accord? How does the mind reroute itself? How does the mind trick itself? So his period of life, I mean, when the war arrived, he had to move out of Austria and he went to London and he finished off a lot of his work in London. His work is just simply there as a map of the mind. Also, when Sigmund died, he said his work is not finished, and he's finishing some of his work, and we have the greatest of honour of finishing some of his work through the spiritual counselling course that we're now teaching. He's teaching now the students on that course, and has been teaching me for many, many years, and Ian, of a much, much deeper working of the mind, how the mind really works. Many more levels to the mind than what medical science is aware of. Just before he died, he was in such a hurry to get some of his work, to get all of his work recorded, that it was all put down very, very quickly, and some of it, a lot of Sigmund's work is very hard to read and very hard to understand. So it gives itself to error in interpretation at times, and he accepts that, and he says, had I recorded perhaps more slowly, in a more simplistic way, it would have been understood more easily. We're deeply privileged to have Christian and have Sigmund teaching on this course, and he comes and he speaks through trance on the course quite often. People have a modern-day therapy session, and I doubt if they'll ever forget it. And what he does a lot of teaching about now is how a human being is meant to be raised. So he gives a lot of the developmental stages, right from conception. What is meant to happen in a human being's life for proper, balanced, healthy mind development. And if it doesn't happen, this is what the outcome is later on in life. So he's given us a lot of teaching of that, and doing a lot of charting on that, and teaching our students that, which they do with their patients.
As his friend, in some respect, how would you describe him?
Sigmund, soft, immensely deep, immensely perceptive.
Intense and earnest.
Extremely loving. Extremely loving. Won't stand any nonsense from you either. No nonsense. Very much dedicated to work. Get on with the work. Yeah. Don't waste time.
There's no
Get
downtime.
on with the work.
He's not someone who will tell a joke.
He's quite dour in some ways, quite dour, but very deep. We're now commencing a trance mediumship session with Ian. We will now talk with Sigmund Freud.
The mind is complex. What I discovered in the search of the mind was the different levels where information was stored, where it was hidden. The mind is not meant to hold information that is not available. It is meant to hold information which is readily accessible. What I learned is that humans have a peculiar ability to section off parts of the mind and not use them. Mostly this was because the parts of the mind that they chose to section off had bad memories, not good. But because most of life's experiences involve more bad than good. More and more components or compartments of the mind were being cut off. Therefore, man was able to use less and less voluntarily. Too scared within himself to open up all components of the mind. For that brought a fear. They did not want bad experiences to repeat. What that meant is that they didn't learn from the bad experience. One of the great problems within the mind and with human condition is anger. People are scared of anger. Most people are fueled by anger. It drives them somewhere. So they are both fearful of it and then use it. This can cause, and usually does, catastrophic outcomes for a person. Something bad has happened. Invariably, it causes a person to be angry. They lock it away. And when they think something is going to happen to them, which might be the same, they will be angry again. As they use the fuel, they open it up just to bring out the anger, to use the fuel to change and go in a different direction. Thus, what they're trying to do is to avoid what they didn't learn the first time, trying to avoid learning it the second time. So it is going to come up and up and up and up, and their life is now in turmoil because they cannot progress out of this wheel of minute self-discovery. Therefore, what I recognized is that the free-flowing form of the mind as was meant, was constructed, was reduced, constrained is what I mean, by people as a method of avoidance under the guise of reducing the pain and the negativity which might approach them in their life without being clever enough to realize that if it did not come from there, it will come from there. It will come no matter what they do, it is going to come. I learned that people are living their life in the now. What they want is what satisfies them right now. And they will put aside their growth, their learning. They will cast away opportunities which can help them in their life, in their charted pathway, so they can have an easier life. And then this easier life becomes one of obstruction, self-obstruction and obstruction from others, one of great constraint within the body, where they begin to endure great hurts. And what I recognized was that for the mind to work properly, it has to free flow, it has to follow the rule of concomitant, where one thought leads to another, naturally, without any impact, where you cannot directly say that there is a direct correlation between any two thoughts or parts of the body. It travels in ways that cannot be charted. And it varies person to person, situation to situation, depending upon what they have hidden in their compartments. People have to learn is that in order to get to a journey of love, they have to walk through the portals of pain and desire to take themselves through that, because a better world waits for them on the other side. Unfortunately, on the way, many people hurt themselves, lock themselves away, and even some people kill themselves. Take away their own life rather than face pain of a temporary nature. For that to change, there has to be a belief in something bigger, something greater, something more grand than just themselves. There has to be something that will instruct and dominate their thought processes to unblock the parts of their mind that are stopping them achieve freedom. Freedom to be who they're meant to be. That is all freedom is, to be who you're meant to be. It takes a great daring to achieve this. And you have to feel like you're part of something greater, where you feel unified. There is a unity between you and a higher power for you to find what is within you, to achieve what you need to achieve. It is sad that the world and the people of the world are so blocked. My work was exploratory to understand the mind. The results were depressing. The ways to unblock it are many and varied, but it can't happen whenever man thinks of himself as alone and not part of something greater. How can you love or get love if you're alone? So this argument of being alone is an argument of convenience. I want everything that suits me, but I will not give to get it, which is an argument of laziness. I have a message, and that the world can only improve itself through cooperation with each other and between this world and the higher world. Thank you.
Sigmund, may I ask for practitioners of the mind and emotions who reject your work or have, for whatever reason, difficulty in accepting your work, what would you say to them today to assist their understanding?
My work was exploratory. Like all of our work, it was never meant to be the final word. It was always meant to be a foundation from which could be improved with greater knowledge. What I know now is much greater than what I knew then. Instead of complaining and trying to find fault, find improvement. Thank you.
Wasn't that amazing? Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to find out more about each of the council members and hear a message by Trance with Ian Rogers, be sure to like, comment or subscribe and check out all the other videos on each of the council members on this channel. Thanks so much.